The Lockhart Perspective. There are 6 unanswered questions after the Supreme Court releases an inconclusive Dobbs leak report. The report on the Supreme Court's leak investigation left more questions unanswered, though it did provide a detailed look into the security apparatus surrounding the most secretive institution of the judicial branch. In a 20-page report, Supreme Court Marshal Colonel Gail Curley, who oversaw the inquiry, said investigators conducted 126 interviews with 97 employees, all of whom denied being the source of the leaked draft opinion signaling the overturn of Roe v. Wade last summer. Conservative judicial activist Carrie Servino, the head of Judicial Crisis Network, slammed the lack of success behind the nearly 9-month investigation, tweeting Thursday, quote, "The report reflects the Chief Justice's utter failure in the administrative aspect of his role. The inadequate security measures detailed creating the environment that allowed the leaker to believe he or she could intimidate the court into changing course in the Dobbs case," Servino said, adding that she hoped a leak of such magnitude never happens again, but, quote, "a lack of consequences for the leaker will encourage history to repeat itself," close quote. Here are the outstanding questions following the release of the draft leak report. 1. Who is the leaker? Out of 97 court employees interviewed for the investigation, officials were unable to conclude whether any of them were responsible for the leak. Nobody admitted guilt during the course of 126 interviews. The findings from the report focused extensively on investigators' attempts to determine how the draft opinion, which circulated in the High Court as early as February 10, 2022, was published by Politico in May. At this time, the report states, based on a preponderance of the evidence standard, it is not possible to determine the identity of any individual who may have disclosed the document or how the draft opinion ended up with Politico, the report noted. Michael Chertoff, who served as Homeland Security in the George W. Bush administration, was tapped by the court to help with the investigation, and he said, quote, "We cannot identify any additional useful investigative measure," close quote. In the months after May 2nd's leak, several online social media users gained thousands of likes and reactions on posts speculating about the identity of the leaker, with most prominent posts being purported rumors about justices' law clerks. The report made clear, after probing such allegations, that officials, quote, "found nothing," close quote, to substantiate their claims. But investigators also made a glaring revelation that too many personnel have access to certain court-sensitive documents. The next one is, could a justice have been the leaker? Among other conspiracies alleging individual high court clerks as purported leakers, another school of thought is that the original originated from one of the 9 justices, a point that was not addressed in the leak report. One belief is that one of the 6 conservative high court justices leaked the opinion as a means to lock in the majority votes for overturning Roe v. Wade that were depicted in the May 2nd draft, which was later confirmed to be the only draft to exist of the decision. Another belief is that one of the 3 liberal justices leaked the opinion in order to create public pressure against the justices wanting to overturn the 49-year precedent. While investigators conducted 126 total interviews among the 97 employees, they determined that only 9 justices, along with 82 employees, had access to electronic or hard copies of the draft opinion. It's especially worth noting that the report made no indication of whether the justices themselves were interviewed or whether they disclosed or discussed the draft with their spouses. Here's another one. Can we rule out a hack? The answer to that was no, but investigators have no way of ruling out whether the leak could have stemmed from an outside cyber attack. Quote, "The investigators did not find any logs or IT artifacts indicating that the draft opinion was downloaded to removable media," but it is impossible to rule out, the report said. Here's one other question. Will the investigation continue? Well, in short, the investigation will continue, but the extensive report, 9 months after the leak, marks the most detailed factual analysis of the investigation since the High Court breach was made public on May 2nd. Vermont law professor Jared Carter told the Washington Examiner, quote, "It is incredibly troubling for the court that they were unable to resolve this. If the internal investigation continues to turn up no answers, that really hits the court's credibility and public standing," close quote. One more question. The report makes no secret that the leak last year saw the High Court sustain one of the worst breaches of trust in its history. So the question is, can Supreme Court justices build trust with a leaker on the loose? Here's a quote. "If a court employee disclosed the draft opinion, that person brazenly violated a system that was built fundamentally on trust with limited standards to regulate and constrain access to very sensitive information," the report notes. The University of Richmond law professor Carl Tobias told the Washington Examiner that not identifying a leaker will complicate efforts to rebuild trust in the court and on the court. Justices of all stripes politically have expressed concerns publicly about rebuilding the trust, and that will be difficult to do in the future, Tobias added, noting some observers have suggested that the leak itself, explains in part why justices have gone a historic length without publishing an opinion. Much of the security concerns were linked to the unprecedented 2020 closure of the High Court during the COVID-19 pandemic. Quote, "The pandemic and resulting expansion of the ability to work from home, as well as gaps in the court's security policies, created an environment where it was too easy to remove sensitive information from the building and the court's IT networks, increasing the risk of both deliberate and accidental disclosures of court-sensitive information," the report stated. Still, Tobias said the report may, quote, "overstate the blame to be placed on the pandemic itself," close quote. Wow. For Headlines with a Voice, this has been the Lockhart News Brief. Lockhart Perspective.